Hello everyone, this is Kitchen Coach Mary Colette Rogers, and I'm here to share a recipe called Hazelnut Topped Sweet Potato Gratin. Because this recipe features sweet potatoes and it's a baked casserole, it's best for the winter, and especially for the winter holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And as you might guess, it begins with the preparing of the sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes should be scrubbed before they're baked. And as you'll notice, I've got a couple of different kinds of sweet potatoes here. This darker orangish one is what they call a yam in the stores. I find that it's moister and more flavorful, and so that's what I recommend for this recipe. Although, if you've got both, feel free to mix and match and put them both in the same dish. That's just fine. So now we'll go ahead and we'll scrub these. For this recipe, the yams should be pre-cooked. I recommend cooking them a day or two in advance, and then you're all set to go. Baking them is easy enough, and that's one of the most common ways to cook sweet potatoes. Cook them in a 350-degree oven for about an hour. You can test them with a fork, and if they're very nice and soft inside, that's when you know they'll be done. Although baking sweet potatoes in the oven is one of the most common ways to cook them, they can also be cooked in a slow cooker, which is a really convenient way to cook them. It takes just 3 to 4 hours on high, or probably more like about 7, 8, maybe even 9 hours on low. Once they're cooked though, and these have cooled off slightly, you'll see that it's really easy to be able to peel the skins off. And you can also see as I'm slicing here the difference between the sweet potato is very yellow fleshed while the yam is more orange fleshed. I will be oiling the casserole pan so that I prevent sticking, just using a little bit of my olive oil. Now we'll go ahead and lay the sweet potato slices in there, and because this is a holiday dish, we're going to lay them in there as artfully as we can, bearing in mind that some have kind of fallen apart, and that's okay. We won't worry about it too much. The sweet potatoes are all prepared, so let's move on to the sauté. We're going to be sautéing 3 things. We're ready to sauté, so I'm adding a tablespoon of oil to my nice heavy-bottomed sauté pan. And we're going to let that heat for just a minute until it's what they call hot but not smoking. And you can tell when it's reached that temperature when the oil gets very thin and it's kind of shimmering. So let's go ahead and test it, and we can see and you can hear that that's sizzling. So it's time to go ahead and add the peppers and onions. And we'll cook those first. They take longer than the pears, which are softer. So we'll cook those a little bit longer before we add the pears. I'm stirring everything around to get it evenly distributed around the pan. One thing it's important to remember when you're sautéing is to not continuously stir it, because that doesn't give the vegetables time to get that nice browning that gives them so much flavor. So we'll let that sit and stir only occasionally to prevent burning. So the vegetables are beginning to look nice and brown. We've been stirring them to prevent them from burning. Let's go ahead and add the pears, and while they cook, the vegetables will continue browning. Our veggies are just about done here, so it's time to add the canned chilies. Now I'm using mild chilies today, but of course if you like things on the spicier side, you can use medium or hot. You can also adjust the amount of chilies that you put in. I like about 2 to 4 tablespoons is what our family likes. So we'll put that in there, let that cook, and then we'll let that continue to cook for a little bit longer while we go make the topping for this casserole. This will be a combination of 3/4 cup hazelnuts, half a cup of whole grain breadcrumbs, which are a little bit difficult to find in the store, so I make my own using the food processor and drying them on a cookie sheet. A 1/4 cup of pumpkin seeds. The recipe calls for tamari roasted pumpkin seeds, but plain roasted pumpkin seeds will work just fine if you can't find the tamari roasted ones. And then a teaspoon of chili powder. The food processor is perfect for chopping up our hazelnuts, which are sometimes called filberts. And be sure when you're chopping them that you use the pulse button so that you're chopping for a second or two, stopping, chopping for a second or two. This ensures that all the nuts will be chopped evenly. You won't be left with some that are pulverized and some that are really large. The hazelnuts are done when they're about the texture of coarse breadcrumbs. We then mix those with our regular breadcrumbs, the pumpkin seeds and chili powder. Once you've finished stirring all the topping ingredients together, we can add the olive oil, and that gets stirred in as well until the mixture is completely moistened. Now we're ready to pull everything together. We're going to start by taking the sauteed vegetables and spreading those over the sweet potatoes that we've already sliced and artfully arranged in our casserole dish. And one of the things I like to encourage people to do is make sure that you don't neglect the corners of a casserole, so that the person who gets that corner piece doesn't feel cheated. So once we've gotten the sauteed vegetables in there, make sure you spread a little bit of the nice fruit mixture and vegetable mixture all around. Then we're going to top everything with that wonderful gratin crumb mixture. And again, make sure we get some in the corners and spread it evenly, kind of shake it with the spoon to get it over the entire casserole. So last off, bake the casserole. Cover it with foil. Put it in the oven on a 400-degree oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. After 30 to 40 minutes, go ahead and pull that tin foil off the casserole. Return the casserole to the hot oven, and that will allow the topping to brown just a little bit and get nice and crusty. After 10 or 15 minutes, go ahead and pull that casserole out of the oven when the top is nicely browned. And for the final touch, sprinkle it with some of this beautiful fresh cilantro that's been chopped. And there's your dish. Go ahead and serve it.